Cracking, everybody. Welcome back to Prison Break Raw, brought to you by Stand for Something Life Incorporated. I'm your host, the one and only JD. Go ahead and give this channel a subscribe, a like, a thumbs up, leave a comment or a message, or read them all as I've said. With that, let's go ahead and get into the topic of this episode, the sex offenders. Now, this is a real dear subject to my heart because I feel very strongly about situations like these and for a lot of reasons, and some of you that know me know why. Not going to go ahead and get into that here because it's irrelevant. I don't want to distract you from the general purpose of this here video. And basically, in dealing with sex offenders, it's kind of where I break ranks with a lot of people in criminal justice reform and prison abolition. The question always comes up is, what do we do with them? Do we include them in criminal justice reform? Should we exhaust more resources to help them and to deal with them and provide them with treatment and the likes? And I have a very different opinion on what I believe that needs to be done with sex offenders, because I honestly believe, unlike what the Justice Department believes and what a lot of other people believe, that sex offenses and sex offenders are actually more destructive to people's lives than any drug dealer or drug will ever be. I'm even going to go on record and saying sex offenses and sex offenders are even more destructive than guns. To me, it's on the top of the list, and it should be taken a lot more serious than it is. And the topic of the show is dealing with somebody who just recently got busted again, involved in some of this despicable conduct, and that's Jeffrey Epstein. That's right, he's that philanthropist, financier, who's a multimillionaire, who's rubbed shoulders with all of these elites that are basically so hypocritical in their pointing the finger at Donald Trump when they all do the same shit. I mean, this dude was even friends with Harvey Weinstein. And all of these people are basically, your kids ain't safe when they're around. And this guy's a perfect example of it. So basically what happened to him originally was that somebody had reported that I believe it was their 14-year-old stepdaughter got taken to Mr. Epstein's house by an older girl. Come to find out later that he had her stripped down and give him a massage. Apparently this man was real into massages. And he really loved to get them massages. It's real cold piece of work, this guy right here. All right, so you would think that this dude would get a bunch of time, right? I mean, they went into his house, man. It was a 53-page indictment on this guy, federal indictment. They found all kinds of stuff all over his house. They found cameras everywhere. Apparently this dude was going to be blackmailing some people. And then he even had a lot of you's favorite, the ones that you go just so gaga and fruity over, the Royals. He had I think it was Prince Andrew over there hanging out, fondling around and stuff. And a lot of other people. I mean, this dude had a laundry list of all kinds of people that he could blackmail. Well, anyways, they found various pictures all over the place, and all kinds of witnesses were victims were coming forward and basically talking about their experience with Mr. Epstein. And you would think they were going to throw the book at him, right? I mean, this dude was responsible for potentially destroying thousands of young girls' lives, right? What did he get? What did he get as a result of that? So this 53-page federal indictment that was brought out by Alexander Acosta, then the United States attorney for the Southern District of Florida, agreed to a plea deal in which the government agreed to grant immunity from all federal criminal charges to Epstein, along with 4 co-conspirators and any unnamed potential co-conspirators. The deal halted the investigation and sealed the indictment. Epstein agreed to the plea to plead guilty to state prostitution charges and register as a sex offender and pay restitution to the 3 dozen victims. There are probably thousands more, but their name didn't get put in there for whatever reason. And that's that. That was it. That's pretty much all that happened to this man. Now think of it like this, okay? Think of where we're at in this world, in this country with these elites. Did a lot of people roll their eyes when I basically counter with an objection on anything when they're talking about, you know, how horrible the president of the United States is, how this and that, when all of the people that they listen to are just as bad. And this is the point I always try to make. Now, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a fan of the president. Personally, I believe all politicians are the same, even if they don't have any experience in politics. That's never the point of what I'm trying to say. The only point that I'm always trying to make is the hypocrisy in the system itself. The hypocrisy of it all. I mean, we could go all the way into guns. We could go into drug charges. We could go into the pharmaceutical cartels that are reaping and reaming the American public. And I could go on. And all these people are the role models of a lot of this snowflake culture that not only has infiltrated the G life and the hip hop world and everything else, but is basically everywhere. I can't throw a rock in any one direction without hitting somebody that has these leanings. And for somebody like myself that's objective, that stays on the outside looking in, that doesn't take a side on any of this shit, right? I have to ask the hard questions. Number one, where are you getting your information from? Number two, what kind of smut do those people have on them? And number three, what is the solution to dealing with these people that a lot of people want to depose or get rid of? And in dealing with these sex offenders, specifically high-profile ones like this guy right here, Jeffrey Epstein, there needs to be a lot more of a boot put on the back of the neck of these people. I mean, this man got off with a deal of a lifetime. With the deal of a lifetime, right? Yet some kid in Chicago basically is a co-conspirator on hooking up two crack dealers, and he gets 20 years in the feds. It doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of people like always get on my case. Well, you know, you got to be a little bit nicer to the sex offenders. I don't have to be nice to anybody. I don't give a fuck. I basically do and say what I want because I'm an individual. You know, I get some heat for some of these videos that I do because they're kind of controversial and stuff. I don't care. Because these realities need to be brought to your attention. And dealing with sick-minded diaper snipers like this needs to be brought to your attention. Why? Because he's back in the news again. He got off scot-free with all of this. He's back in the news again. And guess what for? You guessed it. Sex trafficking of minors. What do you think's going to happen to him this time? Probably going to get a slap on the wrist. You know why? Because he's got all this dirt on all these elites. All this dirt. That's what really needs to change. And that's why I really try to take the approach that I take in criminal justice reform and prison abolition. By basically cutting into your role models and the talking heads and all these people that basically control your mind. By exposing that stuff, basically is an eye-opener. Because it was an eye-opener for me. I mean, I didn't get woke basically until I was in the prison system and in the federal system, and I was like rubbing shoulders with all kinds of white-collar criminals and heavy-duty, high-profile types. I learned a lot of things in there. And I learned to see this country in a much different light than I would be willing to bet 99% of you. Because you all have taken sides. You've drawn lines in the sand and you've taken these political sides. And you're all wrong. Because then we have shit like this. And this man right here is one of you's role models. He may not be the person that you role model, but he's pulling the strings of a lot of your role models. He's one of them people. He's got so much smut on people that he's untouchable. I'd be willing to bet that this man doesn't get not a drop of time in prison for this new case. But yet, Lord forbid, two gang members are hanging out in an injunction zone in Los Angeles. They're going to get stretched. Or Lord forbid, a gang member gets busted with a firearm. But yet this piece of shit can basically exploit our children with impunity. I mean, don't you find that fascinating? Don't you find that to be disturbing? The basic opinion that a lot of people subscribe to, these soft type of people that really have no business creating any form of policy or putting forth any solutions, because to me they don't work, has sold this concept to all of us, saying that most of these sex offenders were victims themselves. That's why they're victimizing people, as if that is an excuse. People sell this point so much. I even watched a TED Talk one time that said that pedophiles should be considered a sexual orientation and they should be protected under hate crime laws. They've already got hate crime laws to protect them. It's crazy, isn't it? A gang member, just a simple gang member, don't have a hate crime protection, but a child molester does. And I could tell you, man, that sex offenders, whether they physically harm a child or they're in the business of circulating child pornography, are co-conspirators to a greater problem, destroying people's lives, destroying their lives. And to sit back and say that, well, we got to help them, we got to do this and this and that. Yeah, man, I'll help them to the guillotine. And you can get mad at me for saying that, but I feel strongly about this because it's something that's dear to my heart. Because I've been exposed to people like that. A lot of you know this. And that kind of stuff destroys lives. That kind of stuff is so commonplace in these prisons that well over 90% of the prison populations in this country suffer from some deal of trauma. Some skeleton in their past has led them to self-medicate, set them on a self-destructive mission of a life of crime, antisocial behavior, all of these things. But the tough on crime approach doesn't address the trauma that creates all the circumstances of criminal conduct. They restrict our rights. They take all our rights. Our gun rights are gone. Our voting rights are gone for a certain period, some places forever. We can never be federally bonded. We can never run for federal public office. We can't even practice law or get a medical license. Second-class citizens, 13th Amendment slaves. And a lot of these people that are in this situation are victims or survivors, depending on what degree of coping with their circumstances, their experience is. They have made themselves second-class citizens because of their choices, in the fact that their inability to deal with this trauma, the self-medicating and substance abuse, and all these factors that follow with it. And to put somebody in prison for the first time causes all kinds of triggers to occur. And this person gets worse and worse and worse. Instead of dealing with that stuff and use that as a means of incentivizing rehabilitation and giving these people an out when they've learned how to cope and to deal with the past trauma that's been holding them back. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about kids being bullied in school. Nobody cares that these are the reasons why people break the law 90 something percent of the time. Yeah, you're always going to have that small number of people that are psychologically unbalanced from the gate, and they just do it because they have no idea why. To them, it's okay. But to sit here and continue to not take sex offenses and sex offenders serious and giving them lesser sentences than a drug dealer or a gang member or a bank robber or even a white-collar criminal that did a Ponzi scheme. I mean, Bernie Madoff got more time than this guy did. These things need to be taken a lot more serious. And I'm not hearing any real solutions. All I'm hearing is a lot of excuses and a lot of like, basically a lot of stuff that just doesn't cut to the chase and doesn't fix it. I honestly believe in my solution that I'm putting forward is sex offenses on these degrees need to be completely separated from criminal justice altogether. It should be put into mental health, first and foremost. Second off, we need to start moving away from this loophole that a lot of these people are using because they learn this shit, that all they got to do is go in there and say that I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child, that's why I do what I do. And it gives people that, well, you know, they were a victim too. Well, the statistics have shown that that's not even really the case. This guy, Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't have no past sexual abuse. Neither did Ted Bundy. Neither did John Wayne Gacy. Neither did Ariel Castro. Neither did Alejandro Avila. Neither did Richard Allen Davis. I could go on and on and on. Richard Ramirez. None of these people had. Even Philip Garrido. None of these people had been sexually abused as children. So miss me with that argument, right? Because it's an insult to the survivors and victims of these people to have somebody explain away in simple terms that, well, they're victims too, so we need to do. No, you don't. You need to separate them from the criminal justice system entirely and put them in mental health treatment. Now, we're not talking about the people that get busted for pissing in public, the husband and wife that decide to go down memory lane and go up onto lover's lane and have some oral sex going on. We're not talking about the guy who's just turned 18 and his girlfriend's still 17 by 6 months. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking about stone cold, violent sexual predators, people that prey on children, people that violently rape women and men, people that drug people for the purpose of raping them, people that humiliate people through rape, people that use it as an instrument of exerting power on people because they feel powerless and weak for whatever circumstances that's going on in their life. Doesn't have to be something related to sex in general, but a lot of these people are all about power and control, dominating. That shit needs to be addressed in mental health, not in criminal justice. That stuff shouldn't even be in prison. You know, people that are on an S&Y yard or something like that shouldn't have to worry about getting some kind of serial rapist or child molester thrown in their cell with them. That's not fair to them if they don't have that. Plus, you don't know whether they might have had some kind of a past trauma with that. You could be triggering them to kill this man. There needs to be a complete different attitude towards this stuff. We all need to come together and find a solution to this, because this is a serious problem. It's a serious problem. You have no idea what kind of trauma these people have caused these young ladies right here with this. And for this guy to continue to get another slap on the wrist, I would even be willing to go so far as to say that if you're a second striker, sex offender like that, you should just be put to death. Why not? You potentially murdered all those people's lives. Some of them people might commit suicide. Their blood is on their hands. Why not? We get people capital murder for conspiracy to commit murder. It's happened. People have been given capital murder for treason, for betraying their country. How is treason more valuable in capital punishment than ruining some child's life? These things need to be looked at clear. There needs to be more mental health treatment outside of corrections to deal with these issues. And when you have these high-profile cases like that, there should be no deals. There should be no sealed indictments. The law needs to be uniform in these things. It needs to be applied the same. I don't care what kind of information he has to give you. More than likely, this Jeffrey Epstein had probably given up a lot of people and gave up a lot of information to get a sealed indictment. Is that fair? It's not fair. Cooperating and stuff like that shouldn't determine lesser sentences. Police work is what get off your ass and get to work, man. If somebody's busted, let them clear the air. If they want to clear the air, great. But don't give them a lesser sentence behind it. We're not teaching these kids nothing. We're teaching them that they can find a scapegoat every single time to get themselves out of trouble. Because we give it to our elites, our role models. They're the ones that get the breaks for all this stuff. We get stretched out no matter what happens. This man right here should be locked up for life in a mental institution. They need to lobotomize his ass, castrate him if possible, basically pull out his brain and poke and prod and electrocute it to try to figure out what the hell it is that's causing him to keep doing this stuff. These are some solid questions that we need to be asking, and these are some of the solutions and feelings that need to be addressed, and need to be respected, and need to be discussed. Because this shit's despicable, man. It's crazy, the double standard that we have in this country. Where a kid who's trying to survive by selling crack cocaine, heroin, or marijuana, methamphetamine, is looking at years in prison. But this dude gets a sealed indictment for destroying children's lives. Get with the fucking program, people. You need to start waking up about a lot of this shit. I feel very strongly about this because there's just so much hypocrisy and double standard all around me in all different aspects of life. That sometimes I feel like Henry David Thoreau and I just want to go out Walden civil disobedience on this world. Cut myself off the grid and become like Grizzly Adams up in the mountains. It's crazy. It's crazy that somebody that was formerly incarcerated, like myself, has a clearer picture of what the world really is than a lot of you do. Get with the fucking program. Quit whining about all this stuff that don't matter and start addressing the shit that really does. You're dealing with sex offenders, they need to be separated from the criminal justice system once and for all and locked up in a mental hospital possibly forever until somebody figures out just what the hell is going on inside of that person's mind. It's not a criminal offense. It's not criminal conduct. It's not antisocial behavior. It's not trying to get your hustle on. It's not trying to beat your environment. It's just pure insanity. And that's all it is. And I'm calling it for what it is. And anything else, I'm calling bullshit. On that, I'm out.